Hello and welcome to your third lesson of week one. So, in this lesson, we're really focusing on two things. One, sentence structure. Woohoo! Sentence structure is one of those things that is completely different to English and how, from an English perspective, you view the structure of the sentence. In Dutch, it's logical as well, but we just think about it quite differently, which if you're translating sentences directly, it gets a bit of a mess. So we are doing that a tiny bit different. And I hope that after this lesson, there is some clarity. Now, I'll explain that sentence structure to you first and going through some examples and stuff. And then we're going to several short conversations about small topics. So you can have small conversations with other Dutchies or with the students in this group and get comfortable in talking, in practicing, in responding to what certain people say, or even starting a conversation rather than just say, Hey, hoe gaat het? Hey, wat is jouw naam? Waar woon jij? I mean, things about the weather is always changing. So if you get used to talking about the weather a little bit more, you are able to just have that small conversation. Um, I should let you know that the Dutch culture is also not about like, hoi, hoe gaat het? That's not what we see and say on the street. We really just say hello, hi, if we want to, excuse me, or if you're living in a small town and everybody knows each other, you do see that people have a conversation on the street more easily. But just randomly saying hi, how are you to people in where you can see that in like the US or Australia, in Nederland, that's not quite the thing. If you really say, hey, hoe gaat het? You get definitely a big of an answer. You wouldn't say, oh yeah, goed. You would have a bit more of a conversation. So the hoe gaat het is definitely a conversation opener. And hoi is just a starter. But small conversations about like the weather and how it's too hot or too cold, or if you're just randomly picking up a coffee from the coffee machine at work and you're just having a small conversation with a colleague, you can say a few things. So that's a little bit of the introduction. Now, I won't keep you waiting. Let's just dive into the sentence structure. I'll just go over the basics of the sentence structure today so that you are able to recognize and practice simple sentences, which is exactly where you are right now. For those of you who haven't learned another language aside from your mother tongue, or you haven't really had proper grammatical terms or things like that in school, try and listen to me and get a bit of the ease from it. I will explain all the terms, but sometimes for some people it will help to have the terms and the names for it. For other people, it doesn't. So this is why it's a bit more generic, and I'll share as much as I can, but pick those things up that resonate for you, that helps you to learn and remember and practice it in a way that helps for you, because everybody does learn. Everybody learns differently. All right, so let's get started. This is the zinsvolgorde. So the sentence following, the sentence order. Ergo, the sentence structure. Now, these are sentences that I've taken from the small conversations that we'll go into in a sec. We are usually known in English to put the verb after the subject. The verb is your action word. It's your doing word, right? Like walking and swimming and being and am and I have. I do, I will, I can, I sit. All of those words are called verbs because they move someone, either physically or mentally. It's a state of being, it's a state of doing. All the ing words in English are usually verbs, like I'm talking, I'm sitting, I'm speaking, I'm recording, all of those things. Then so that's the verb. That's what you see right here. I just keep it in English for now so you can get used to the terms. So that's a verb. In English, before a verb is a subject. The subject is who or what this thing is doing. So who is talking? I am talking. Who is listening? You are listening, if that makes sense. So it can be I or you or he or she, a name, a thing, we, they, etc. All right. In Dutch, as you can see here, usually we have the same structure as English, and we say I talk. We would say that as well. Ik praat. You listen. Jij luistert. Okay, so it is the same order. So that doesn't really change. What does change is in a sentence, and I won't get into that today as such, but just to give you an example, if you talk about the subject in English, it then always is followed by a verb. Okay, tomorrow I talk to you. I talk to you tomorrow. I talk is always in that order. In Dutch, that's not the case. So in English, they always say like, I and talk are married. And it's very old fashioned if you see the subject as the male and the verb is the female and the female follows the male, right? But in Dutch, the subject and verb are married as well. So that means that the main verb is always connected to the subject, but they can be swapped around, right? They can be female male, they can be male male, they can be female female, whatever, gender neutral. So rather than having your subject and verb, you can sometimes see that the verb goes before the subject. I won't go into that right now. That is something that we'll pick up later in this course. Right now, I just want you to get used to starting your sentences with je, okay, or ik, whatever the subject may be. So this is actually quite simple. So any normal sentence, not a question, will start with who or what is doing, and then the verb, okay? Now, in English, if you say, I am talking, then am is the main verb and talking is your second verb. So not only are the subject and a verb related or next to each other, all the other verbs are following, like multiple last names or something. In Dutch, that is not the case. That's what we see over here, other verbs, okay? So we only need that main verb to be connected to the subject, like a main relationship. Anything else, we want to know the objects, the details more than the actual other verbs. So let's say I am talking about the weather. We would say I am about the weather talking. That's pretty much what we say. Not really, but when it comes to the placement of the verbs, yes. So, or I go fishing tomorrow. We would say I go tomorrow fishing, if that makes sense. So we have to swap the or replace the verb to the end of the sentence. Now, that requires some active thinking, some pausing. It says change of habit. For some people, it really helps to say, okay, let's just put my Dutch cap on and really get into the Dutch grammar and sentence structure, leaving the English behind, especially if you get more used to the Dutch. You're going like, oh yeah, this is what Dutchies do, and not like, hey, this is what I'm used to in English. Okay. So, then the object. A lot of people really find it a handy way to think about the object, which is the opposite of the subject. So it can be a subject as well, but usually it is whatever things that arise that is not doing it, right? Like I am talking to you. You can say also you are talking to me, right? So in this case, I am talking to you, even though that you could be a subject. In this case, it's the object. It's not doing the talking, if that makes sense. Now, the objects can contain of a time. It can contain a manner, like how you're doing it, what you're doing, who you're doing it with, and the place, so the location. Essentially, when we're thinking about the question words, this is a when, this is a what, how, or who, and this is the where. An extra thing to think about is this is the order, right? So time, manner, place. Time goes first because we are Dutch. We love to know the time. We love to be on time. So that has to be on point first thing in the sentence. It has priority. The place, however, is less popular. It always goes last in the sentence structure. And then in the middle, it goes the what, the who, the where. The what, the how, the who. And then if you have any extra verbs aside from the main verb, they go last. So let's go to the sentence that I used. Je ziet iemand op straat en praat over het weer. This is a random sentence, but you can see here, je, you, is our subject. Ziet, to see, is our verb. That's how we're doing it. So we've got this one covered. Iemand is someone. So that covers our manner, our who. And then op straat is our place. It's our where. Then we've got our and. So and is seen as a conjugation word. And it breaks up the two main sentences, meaning a new main verb will come. Okay. In English, it's the same. Like I talk or I see someone and I talk about the weather. Okay. I see, I talk. So praten is talking. So we're going back to the verb. Yes, you can add je praat. Okay, so you could add that, but because the subject is the same as at the start of the sentence, you can leave it out. Same as English. You see someone on the street and talk about the weather. You can add in the you or you can't. Up to you. Up to you. So praat is our verb. And then lastly, it says over het weer, about the weather. So that is our what. Again, our manner. What are you talking about? About the weather. What are you seeing? I see someone. Where are you seeing someone? Op straat. So that is really dragging it out what you can think about while making this sentence. Okay? Here you have the same thing. Ik woon met mijn vriend in Nederland. So we have to divide this up. So it's not word by word, but it's section by section. Again, ik is I, our subject. Woon is our verb. It's live. So I live. What are you doing? I'm living. Then who are you living with? Met mijn vriend. Where are you living? In Nederland. So that is really general how we break up sentences. Now, in the portal, you will find several exercises, including explanation as well, that you can go through, and a little workbook as well with some textbook explanation, so you can read through it and go over it if you just don't want to listen to me all the time. So this is the general sentence structure. I suggest writing this down, and as we go through the small conversations, see if you can also recognize what certain words are and how the sentences are being made. If you then understand the words and what they mean, think about how it sounds in English, and if you can recognize how the Dutch sentence structure is different to English. So this is your simple sentence structure. Again, the same as English, subject and verb, except that we put any other verb than the main verb last, and that the object goes in the middle in time, manner, and place order. Also note that the verb always goes in the second position. So today I talk, then talk is in third. We say today talk I. Today talk I. So that means that the verb goes in second position. Super duper important. If you take anything from this, please note, learn, remember that the verbs pretty much 90 to 95% of the time go in second place and last in the sentence. If you nail down those two positions for your verb, you have mastered sentence structure like way ahead. This is the most commonly made mistake. So please do yourself a favor and really remember this. You'll see this in the next bit of the exercise, which is questions. All right. Here, if you have an open question, then again, you see that the verb goes in the second place. You have a question word. By question word, I mean who, what, where, why, which, how, when. I think I've got them all. Then you see that the subject goes after, so not before, but after, and then followed by the objects as the normal simple sentence and the other verbs. So, wil jij ook een koffie? Doesn't have a question word. It just says, do you want a coffee? It only requires you to say ja of nee. So if there's not an open question, it won't have any of the question words. Then you skip this step, but start straight away with the verb. Another note is listen to the English sentence first. Do you want a coffee? Essentially, do is a verb, and so even the English sentence will start with a verb. Do you want a coffee? We don't do. So in the English sentence, there's do and want as your verb. We throw out the do, we don't do, but we start straight away with want, which is will in this sentence. So translated, it will be, want you also a coffee? Do you want a coffee? Wil jij ook een koffie? Okay, so we start with the verb, we have our subject, we have our also, which is kind of like a frequency of time, and then we have our what, een koffie. If we then want to ask, what kind of coffee do you want? So I'm going to write this down for you. What coffee do you want? Now, what in Dutch is usually wat. So we either say wat voor and then coffee, because that is the what coffee is together. It's one section. Then So even though this is a question word, it belongs together what coffee. It's one thing, if that makes sense. What for coffee, then our verb. I'll pause for a second to see if you can remember what the verb was. It is wil. And then we just have to say the subject, jij. So, wat voor koffie wil jij? The do, we don't do. And the verb goes first before the subject in a question. We can also say, which coffee do you want? Which is welke. And then koffie wil jij. If that makes sense. Now, I'm just going to enter and go through making ik woon met mijn vriend in Nederland. If we look at where do you live, how do you say where do you live? Hopefully you got that one. It is waar woon jij? Again, the verb goes before the subject, and waar is where, and consider the question word. So waar woon jij? If I change, do you live with your boyfriend in the Netherlands? You could say, woon jij met jouw vriend in Nederland? Now I can't ask myself a question, so I have to say, do you live with your friend or boyfriend? Again, you change this around. We call this an inversion, but essentially it's just keeping that verb in the same place. We are very, very, very consistent with our verb placement. So that is super important to know. You can note these down if you like, pause the video if you do want to write these questions down. But for now, I'll just move on and go to the short conversations. There are a few topics. There's 3 topics that we're going to discuss. Again, there's Dutch and English, which you still see now as we're going into week 1. Along the course, I'll move out the English because A, you're starting to recognize more words, and B, I've noticed that if I look up words myself and really get into the active practice of translating rather than, it's just here, whatever, it involves you to actually think of translating it yourself and then to check. But for now, it is here for your convenience. All right, so short conversation, korte gesprekjes nummer 1. Je ziet iemand op straat en praat over het weer. So that's the question that or the sentence that we just saw in our example as well. The dashes are one person, and without the dashes, the other person. So you could say, for example, wat een weertje, hè? Ja, het is koud vandaag en veel regen. Inderdaad, lekker binnen blijven. Zeker. So a thing that you notice is the ch. So the je or the ch is a diminutive. We love to use this. It's not like, what a little weather, hey? It's just a cuter way or softer way to talk about certain things. And I love it because it's typically Dutch. We love to talk this way, and there are certain situations that you use them in. So weertje is pretty much something that everybody will say in this line. But the ch and the yus are also sort of diminutives, are often used for children and talking to animals and stuff like that. Women also use it more than men. So that's the cuteness factor. We also refer to it for little things. Notice that dag is day, but then today is vandaag with double A. Again, lekker. People might know it from calling food yummy, lekker. But we want to say not yummily stay inside. Lekker is also nice. So nicely stay inside. En then zeker. Okay, so that is a conversation. This is obviously one about being cold and rainy. Feel free to change words around. So if you want to say it is sunny today, you can say het is zonnig vandaag. So you can translate sunny and kind of swap around the conversations, bring them into your live lessons if you're not sure how to say certain things to expand your practice. Again, just like in the other lesson, feel free to read through it by yourself, and then we're going to practice this at the end as well. So short conversation number 2 is being busy. Druk is busy. Druk zijn. Jij ziet je buurman in de supermarkt. Oké. Hoi, hoe gaat het? Ja, goed. Erg druk op het werk. Ja, ik heb het ook druk. Binnenkort een koffietje drinken? Ja, goed idee. Tot snel. So it's a very simple conversation. And I'm pretty sure that if you know the word druk, which I just said was busy, you are actually able to understand this conversation because lots of the words are either similar or you already know. Again, you see that we have ch here. And in a sentence like this, we don't really have a verb. So very busy at the job, so at the work. So notice that we have to add the het here. And then I have it also busy. That's what we say. So I have stays together. Also notice that we say I have instead of I am. You can't be busy. If you are busy, then you're like having ADHD, whether you're busy with things, so you have things to keep you busy. That's how we think about the language. Makes sense also. So soon a coffee drink. All right. So this is a very short way of saying like, oh, do you want to have a coffee soon? Because we don't say, do you want in this case? If I were to say, do you want? I would have said, wil jij, verb subject, wil jij binnenkort een koffietje drinken? That would be it. So you don't always need to do that, especially in a short conversation. Knowing this and doing this will help you to be more authentically Dutch, which is what we are trying to focus on. The other things that you can see is pretty logical if you look at it. As sometimes we just have to learn the phrases, and sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. Again, Dutch and English have a lot of similarities, but there are also a huge amount of differences that you just need to get used to. Again, I'll read it really quickly. Hoi, hoe gaat het? Ja, goed. Erg druk op het werk. Ja, ik heb het ook druk. Binnenkort een koffietje drinken? Ja, goed idee. Tot snel. Then on to our last short conversation. De koffieautomaat. De coffee machine. Jij ziet je colleague, bij de koffieautomaat. Again, subject verb. Who are you seeing? Where are you seeing them? So the place goes last, the location. Hey, hoe was jouw weekend? Ja, leuk. Wij waren kamperen. En jij? Gezellig. Wij gingen met vrienden dineren. Ook leuk. Wil jij ook een koffie? Ja, lekker. Okay, so this is a question. Again, how is your question word? And was is your verb. Dus dat komt eerst. That will come first. This is pretty similar. And then this sentence is also important. Wij gingen met vrienden dineren. We, subject. Gingen is your went, so that's your second verb. Then it's not we went dining. No, we went with friends dining. So dineren goes last. Okay? So het is niet wij gingen dineren met vrienden. Wij gingen met vrienden dineren. Very, very important. So keep that in mind. Now, I'll read it one more time really quickly, and then you will find some audio where I'll be asking you the questions, the prompts to respond yourself, to have this short conversation. So go through this as many times as you need to, and then answer the questions that I'll be asking you in the audio. Again, hey, hoe was jouw weekend? Ja, leuk. Wij waren kamperen. En jij? Gezellig. Wij gingen met vrienden dineren. Ook leuk. Wil jij ook een koffie? Ja, lekker. Pause and go over this as many times as you need. Go through the exercises. Be present in the live lessons. Note down any questions, doubts, sentences you want to know down and take them with you, or ask it in the Facebook group. Well done. It is a bit of a whirlwind, but by going through all the exercises and stuff that you will find in the portal, I am so sure that you will learn this, know this, and understand it in no time. Feel free to re-listen to this if needed as well. And I'll speak to you soon. See you in week 2.